You're listening to Homeschool Unrefined. I'm Maren.
And I'm Angela. Let's encourage each other, laugh, and get real about homeschool. Welcome to the podcast where we keep homeschool simple, real, and fun. You've got episode 69, Where Our Kids Fight.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/homeschoolunrefined.
Hello, everybody. We are so glad you're here. Thank you for coming back and listening to us and being a part of our community. We just love having you here. We have a great Facebook group, a closed Facebook group called Unrefined Homeschoolers. We're having lots of good conversations there, and I love the community that's developing. So we'd love to have you over there if you are not already. Feel free to just hop on Facebook and search Unrefined Homeschoolers, and then you can join that way.
Yes, and we have some very exciting shows coming up very soon, including next week. We have a very special guest, Julie Bogart. It's going to be on our show.
So exciting.
And so she has this whole, the Brave Writer lifestyle. It's a curriculum. Is it a curriculum? It's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle.
Just so many resources. It's just so many good resources.
Yeah, so if you haven't met her yet, or you have, either way, we'd love to have you listen in on that conversation because I think it would be a good introduction to those of you who are curious about Brave Writer. Yeah,
and really, I like listening to her because she is just the most inspiring person.
Right.
So I just listen to her and I feel like I can do this. I can do this.
She's a former homeschool parent of 5. So she's done it, and she's had lots of different experiences in that time and since then. And so she's a good person to listen to.
Yeah. And her, it's a Brave Writer lifestyle, but it's really not just about writing. It's, it's all encompassing for homeschool, really.
Yeah.
Everything she talks about. So I just get so excited to hear from her.
Yeah.
So
that'll be great. Yeah. So a couple weeks ago, we did an episode about screens.
Yes.
And screen time, and we wanted to give a little update. Maybe say some things that we didn't say or that that have come up since then, because that's what happens. We record an episode and then afterwards we're like, oh no, I didn't say this, or
so many things
come up.
We could do another whole episode about the stuff we forget to talk about.
So we wanted to do a little update. Maren, do you have an update?
Well, I don't know if I have an update, but something I didn't talk about much, but a lot of our listeners actually brought up in comments or messages to us was their kids who have ADD, ADHD, maybe they're on the spectrum, and it just is, they loved hearing from us because they just felt like a lot less guilty about giving their kids screen time.
Yep.
Which I felt really good about. And I have a child with ADHD. And I'm actually, one diagnosed, but I'm pretty sure more of my kids have ADHD too. And I know I do. And so I get it. I really understand that pull to screen. And actually, I sometimes think, I do think that screen time can sometimes be very therapeutic for someone with ADHD. And so for a long time I felt very, ashamed about it. I feel ashamed that I'm letting my kids do this, and that's my way of letting them cope with, with life. And it just doesn't seem like the right thing to do.
Right.
But I just have to say, we need to let that kind of shame go. We need to let it go.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what our message is for kind of any topic that we talk about, is we want to just bring it to light, and so that we can all talk about it and not feel alone and not feel that shame when thinking, well, I let my kids, whatever it is, I let my kids use lots of screen time, or like today we're going to talk about fighting. My kids fight. Whatever it is, there is no shame in that, because we're all just going through that.
Right. And we sometimes, Angela, when you and I are planning these things, we just feel like we are right in the middle of this, and we are probably not doing it right either. So, but I think our point is to not give information and make sure everybody's doing it correctly. I think our point is to just get it out into the open. So there's the shame melts away. We just don't want that anymore. There's no need. There's no room for that.
Right. Right. Yeah.
It's just better to talk about it
Just-
without
yeah,
the
we-
judgment.
Talk about it, start the conversation. Just it's comforting in anything to be able to say, oh, that happens to you, that happens to me
Yeah.
too,
Right?
and that feels comforting. So that's what
Yeah.
we're trying to do.
Yes, exactly. What have you thought of since that
Well,
episode?
it's funny because we did this whole episode and I listened to it, because we have to listen a couple times in the editing process. So I've listened to it a couple times and I thought, I still don't know what I'm doing for screen time. That was my
Yeah.
big takeaway. Like I did this whole episode on screen time and I still don't have a screen time plan.
That's
and-
okay.
And Jeremy and I have been talking about it in the evenings after the kids go to bed. We feel like we need a new plan. Like the one we're
Yeah.
doing, or the one we're using right now is just not working for us.
Right.
But we feel kind of stuck
Sure.
in not knowing what is the right thing to do. And it's really tricky for us to figure that out. I think both of us are we want to do the right thing. Jeremy and I that's our personality.
Yeah, it
we
is.
want to get it right. Do the right thing.
Yes.
We don't want to screw this up, and
Yeah.
that's not good. I mean, that can be paralyzing.
Well,
So
there are good and bad things about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
good that you want to do the right thing for your
Yeah.
kids. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So our issue is, well, all of it, we talked about it a little bit in the show, but my son is motivated to read through getting more screen time,
Right.
and so I don't want to lose that.
Yeah.
Like I just don't. If I just do what you do, Maren, which is like give them a certain amount each day, but they have to read before they do it.
Uh-huh.
He's not going to be that. I'm not saying he's excited about reading, but he is kind of excited. He's like, oh, look at my stack of books. I'm going to read so I can get screen time. And he picks
Sure.
out his favorite books and he's excited. Whereas if it's just part of his homeschool day, there wouldn't be that much excitement.
Sure,
He might
sure.
just lazily grab a few books and look through them,
Sure.
right?
Gotcha.
So I don't want to lose that.
Yep, exactly. And this is where every kid, every family is so different.
Every family's so different.
Because this is what's working for your
Right.
son, right? So you do not want to lose that. You don't, go with
Right.
it. You just have to
I
go
know.
with those things.
The hard part, though, is that we are managing 3 different kids
Right.
and their different
I
screen
know.
time
I know.
minutes.
Yeah.
And that is just not working for us. And then not all of my kids are being honest about their time.
Yeah.
So, we're having to manage that too. And it's just, and then our kids have these iPod Nanos where they listen to audiobooks.
Mhm.
And
They want
that's
that to
kind
count.
of that's kind of getting out of control. No, they don't want that to count.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's kind of getting out of control too because they're listening a lot during the day. And we want to have kind of a rule about that. Like you can only listen after this time or when your work is
Sure.
done or wherever. But then I feel like we're having like iPod rules and then screen time rules. And I'm kind of paralyzed because I don't know what the right answer is right now.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Well, I feel the same way. I was thinking for the summer we would do what you were doing.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't know
Okay,
what
yeah.
we're going to do. But I was thinking, well, what I was thinking was the amount of time that you read is the amount of time you can have screens just
yeah.
for the summer.
Yeah.
So that's probably a little different than you, but
Yeah.
I don't know, but we'll see. But I don't know if I want to manage all that either.
I know. The other thing I was thinking
I have
that we
4
could
of them,
do.
4 kids.
I know. Even worse.
I know.
The other thing I was thinking about doing just temporarily is just taking a break. Like we are
Yes.
taking a break
I
from
was-
screens, all of them.
I've been thinking
All
about that too.
screens.
Yeah.
Even if it's for school,
Yep. Computers.
even if it's something good,
Yep.
even if it's good, just we're taking a break for 2 weeks
Oh
or
my
a week
goodness.
or something.
Whoa.
I don't know.
I know if I can do it for 2 weeks. I was thinking for a week, and then I was gonna even
Scale it back.
scale that one back. But maybe we should do it. Maybe we should all both do it together. Maybe we should all do it. No, I don't know.
Homeschool unrefined screen time break.
Once I just
Isn't
said that,
there a-
I'm pulling
Yeah,
it back.
no,
I'm
yeah.
pulling it back.
Isn't there a month for
Yeah.
this?
I think well, I remember when we were teachers,
Oh, there was.
there was a week. There was a
Oh, a
week.
week. Yeah,
Yep.
there's a week. Yeah.
I don't know if they do that anymore, though.
Too hard. Yeah. Okay.
So we're going to dive into another topic that we also don't have black or white answers to. This
Nope.
is not a right or wrong issue, definitely.
We're not experts.
We are not experts. but it is very relevant to both of us. I think about a month ago, Angela, I think you came to me and you said, "Are your kids fighting a lot?"
I remember when that was. That was at Christmas time.
It was Christmas time. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
And
So
I remember I was like, not really. I mean, you know, I know it seemed to me at that point that I always had like one kid who was dealing with something and it really affected one other kid. So it was like, usually there's like two out of my 4 kids who like had a thing going on and we could just deal with that pretty easily. But right now we are kind of in the midst of a lot of fighting.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. So you came to me, I don't know, a week or so ago, and you're like, actually, my kids are really fighting now.
Yeah.
Remember how when you asked me if my kids were fighting, and I said, not really.
Now they're in
actually, they're really fighting now.
Yeah.
And my kids were fighting terribly around Christmas time in January, and it was just it was a lot of factors.
So many factors, yes.
It's gotten slightly better.
Good.
But it's still there, and I still wonder and worry and have all the thoughts. And we think that this is a topic that, sometimes people mention or complain about, but it's not really brought to light like it should be. There's still a lot of shame around it.
Yes.
You can feel ashamed that your kids fight.
Yes.
Or I can tend to feel ashamed that my
Definitely.
kids
I
fight.
do.
Like if I were doing something different, if I were a better parent, they wouldn't be fighting.
If I would just show a better example of how to deal with things, this would be better.
Right.
If my husband and I could talk,
we could fight well in front of the kids,
then if we could do a better job, then they would do a better job or whatever.
Right.
I mean, there's just so many things that we tell ourselves. I just posted this week too about it, and I was just saying, I was at the point last week where I was like, what are we even doing homeschooling? And that's where I think this idea of I'm doing this wrong. This is not good. This is a bad situation, and I can't solve it. Our kids need to go to school.
Yeah.
And that's just not, I just think that's not the right answer because it's kind of just a Band-Aid for the issues are still going to be there.
Right.
And I think it's better for us to be together and figure these things out together as a family for us. This is just, I'm talking about my own family. If I sent my kids to school right now, it would just be because, I don't want to deal with it.
Right.
But it's better for them to be dealing with it now. My mom has always said this, even when my kids were, 2 in the terrible twos or whatever. And they wanted to do everything themselves or were defiant. And my mom would always say, isn't it so good that they're doing this now rather than when they're 25?
Yeah.
And I think about that with fighting too. I think about that all day. Whenever there's something that I'm frustrated about, I think I'm so glad my kids are going through this with me now at their age. And we can talk about it and we can process through it in a non-shameful way. And so that when they are 25, 35, 45, they can move past this. They can move past it because we've processed it. Not that they're going to be perfect at it. They're always going to have something probably that they're maybe not great at dealing with. But processing through at a younger age is just so helpful.
Right. Those are wise words from your mom.
Yes, I know. So what do you think causes fighting, Angela, in your house? Or
in my house, I mean, I think there's so many different things.
Yes.
I think in my house, one big thing is jealousy.
Oh.
And I think that's typical among siblings.
Yeah.
Because there's always some competition.
Yes.
For attention, for resources, for things like that. In my house, it happens a lot with like birth order type things. Like when the younger copies the older one, or the younger one wants to do what the older one's doing.
Right.
Then there is sometimes like some jealousy type issues.
Right.
Around that.
Right.
And like I said, I think, and I remember that when I was a kid too. Sure. I remember those types of feelings. Or just like, I want to be independent, or I want to be my own person. And I don't want my siblings to be doing what I'm doing.
Right.
And so I think in my house that is a big one. And it's normal.
Yes.
And it's real. And it's like you said, it is a good place to work it out.
It is. It is.
And
It's
I
a
think
safe place.
throughout time, throughout time, this has been an issue with siblings.
Yes, definitely. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah, I think for my kids, a lot of it is not feeling heard or understood.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think it just we try to do one-on-one dates with our kids. And I
Yep.
feel like the more we do that, just have more one-on-one time with each kid,
Mm-hmm.
the better the fighting actually gets. I mean, it gets better.
Yeah.
So when that doesn't happen, I feel like more fighting happens because
Yeah.
they just don't feel as heard. So
Right. Right. That's kind of like what Kim John Payne talked about in Simplicity Parenting, which we reference that book a lot, but he talks about soul fever
yes,
and the child feeling a certain, like, either overwhelmed or off somehow, and that child needs a rest, like mentally, or they need
Right.
more care mentally or physically or emotionally.
Sure. And I remember in the book, I know Kim John Payne talked about this, and in my own mind, I was thinking sometimes it's when a child is too busy. They have too much on their plate, too much stress. Or it could be the opposite. Like there's not enough going on and your child needs more outlets, maybe.
Right.
Or it could be that they heard some bad news that they haven't processed yet.
Right.
Maybe they're
Right.
dealing with something
Right.
and with their family, or they heard a friend, something bad happened to a friend's family or something. Just it could be anything like that, and then it could trigger some some activities or words that are not like their normal self.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times that child can look like you would expect them to look sad or tired
Right.
or something like that, but it comes out in ways that you wouldn't expect.
Yes.
So it can come out like anger or annoying, just like them being annoying.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Like
and
a kid isn't going to come up to you and say, Mom, I'm feeling a little unheard this week. Can we spend some time together?
Right.
No, they're just going to go bug their sibling probably. Or
Or
whatever.
bug you. Yeah.
Or
bug somebody.
You just never know how it's going to come out. It's
Right.
different for everybody.
And so when a child is doing that, what I try and remember now, I'm not good at this. I'm not, don't get me wrong. I am not real good at this. But what I try to remember is that I need to pull them in closer.
Yes.
That child who is annoying you right now, that's the
Yes.
one you actually need to move towards.
Yes.
And spend more time with rather than ignore,
and
which is what you probably want to do.
It seems like we should almost do the opposite sometimes.
Yeah.
We're like, oh my goodness, this child cannot be around people right now.
Yeah.
You need to go take a time out. And sometimes a little time away is fine, but I think it's probably better to pull them closer.
Right.
And listen to them and hug them and snuggle them and read their favorite book with them.
Right.
Or
And
whatever.
what they're dealing with may not come out, but they may feel your support in that time.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there are things, the other thing I think is just very, very basic things like being hungry or tired.
Yeah.
Because
Especially for young kids.
That's when I get fighty.
Yeah.
I get a little fighty when I'm hungry and tired. Yep.
Yeah, I guess tired is a big one for me too, or like overwhelmed with all the senses. Just overwhelmed in the house, like too much noise, too much like motion. My eyes are seeing too much or whatever, and I need a little break myself.
That's so good to remember because I don't think about that kind of stuff.
You don't.
I don't. And I should. I need to.
Yeah. Especially if you're highly sensitive. So we've talked about that before on this podcast, the highly sensitive person, which I am, and I feel like we should kind of treat all people that way,
Yes, definitely.
We should accommodate in that way.
Yeah, I think being a highly sensitive person is a result of our culture today, which is just full of sensory outputs all day long.
Oh yeah.
Right? And so it's probably better for none of us to be, have all of that sensory overload on us.
Yeah.
Some of us can just deal with it, even though it's probably not the best for us.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that could be what's going on with your child or yourself.
True. So true.
And, yeah. Like everybody just needs, we turn off the music. We got to turn off the vacuum cleaner, turn off the lights, maybe go into a place that's clean. I don't know. For me, it's like looking at the mess around.
Right.
It's hard too.
You know, even Sean and I used to fight about that kind of stuff a lot more. And now that I think he would say he's a highly sensitive person.
Yep.
And it just makes me understand him so much better.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think, okay, yeah, we can't have all these lights on or whatever. The temperature needs to be at this spot. Because I was just like, how can you be so picky about the temperature? But really, it's just, this is his high sensitivity. And it's important to listen to him,
Right.
you know,
Right.
accommodate.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
So, and kids definitely, and think of, you know, Sean's an adult. And think of the kid, you know, a kid is just not as mature enough or, you know, sophisticated enough to deal with that even as well as an adult. So
Right. They're not even going to have the words to tell you.
Right.
Yeah.
Even teenagers, I don't think.
No.
I mean, have that ability always. So.
Yep. So sometimes you just need to pull back.
Yeah.
And maybe take some things off the schedule, you know, and stay in or maybe get out in nature or whatever it is, but just kind of simplify a little bit to help your child if they're like having a soul fever.
So true. So good. You know, and so I think it's really important for us to understand that fighting does not always come from the things we think it does. Also, you know, sometimes we think, well, they just need to go to school. That's what I was thinking, right? Last week. Yeah. They just need to go to school. They need time away from each other. And I just don't think that's always the case. And sometimes I tell myself, we just need a bigger house. That's all everybody needs their own bedroom and everything would be solved. And I think it's just not the case.
Right. Because if your kids were in school or if they had their own bedrooms, I mean, there would be less opportunities for fighting. But then also there's less opportunities for practicing all the things that go along with fighting.
Right. And that's the whole reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Doing this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and we're going to talk later about how fighting isn't bad, but you're missing out on those like rich learning opportunities that come along with fighting. I mean, and if they go to school, they still will probably fight a little bit, but and it isn't because you're home.
No. And I think sometimes there's more fighting too when kids go to school because there's, you know, the bonding time isn't there either.
Right.
So, I mean.
And when they get home, they're extra crabby and tired and stressed.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that I think we all think is I'm doing something wrong. I am screwing them up.
Right.
This is not going well.
I think this one all the time.
Yeah.
That if I were doing a better job, like coaching them through fighting, they would not be continuously fighting.
Sure.
Because didn't we figure this out last time you guys fought? So I must not have done a good job of of getting you guys to figure that out because it's happening again.
So true.
And that is, I know that's not true because my husband and I fight about the same things. We've been fighting about the same things the whole time we've been married.
Right, exactly.
We haven't figured it out.
We all have.
It's not easy.
Things, exactly. No, it's so true.
So it's not that we're all doing something wrong. It is a natural thing that happens when humans interact with each other.
Right.
There's going to be conflict. I mean, it's guaranteed. It is guaranteed.
So
there is going to be conflict.
Exactly. I will admit there are times I think it's good to take breaks, you know, like I would love a bigger house, but we're not getting a bigger house. So maybe just getting out and doing something for a day is better than us staying in the house all day. I mean, sometimes there are things like that's why we all want to go on vacations, right? We need a change of scenery. Yeah. We need places. We need a positive experience with our family sometimes.
Totally.
I mean, I think those are great to do. And so I don't want to discount that either because I look for those things a lot.
Yeah.
Things to distract us from the problems. And I think it's great to have breaks.
That's fine.
It's good to have breaks.
Right.
But I think it's okay to fight too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
so fighting is not bad.
Right.
I mean, it looks bad. And it sometimes can turn bad.
Right.
And it can be real frustrating. But it is an inevitable part of just being a human being. And so I want to be there with my kids figuring out how to figure that out.
Yeah, it's not pleasant for sure. And
No.
it's not a place you want to stay either. I think what we don't want to do is to cut off the fight and just say there is no fighting. Fighting is bad. Stop. And we kind of instead of processing through our emotions, we plug them up. And that we don't want to do.
Right.
That never solves the problem. It might solve the fight. There might not be any fighting, but then still the relationships are broken.
Right. It doesn't solve what caused the fight.
Right. Exactly.
It just there might not be any yelling or hitting or whatever.
Yeah. But then we also, I also feel like we don't want to just sit in the fight either and sulk and be in,
Yeah.
So it's good to process through the fighting.
Right.
Doesn't mean we're going to solve the problem necessarily, but we don't have to sit in this, like, the deep red anger part of it forever either.
And this is one of the big advantages of homeschooling. I will say this is probably one of my top reasons that I am glad that we are homeschooling.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have the time when these things come up, and they do come up, I would say at least once a day, sometimes multiple times a day. We have the time to break and work that out.
Yes.
Where even when our kids were in school part-time, we didn't have the time for that.
Right.
I didn't feel like we had the time for that because we were rushing all the time. Right. Like when you're rushing out the door and fighting happens, you don't have time to stop and talk about it.
No.
So I like that
the freedom to do that.
The freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, the freedom.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is homeschool. I mean, figuring out how to process through a fight is if you got that down when you graduate from homeschool, you've got so much of life figured out.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Right?
It is one of the skills that I want my kids to have.
Yeah.
It is a real life skill.
Yeah.
It's going to happen in any situation, jobs, roommates, if you get married someday, whatever kind of relationship you have, it is going to happen. Right.
And there's probably 100 skills within this that you are learning, including, just dealing with people, I guess, but learning empathy, emotional intelligence, which is just so huge. You can't really have a job without emotional intelligence. And it's a safe place to work these things out. You are learning forgiveness, patience, how to apologize.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's huge.
I mean, it took me, I'm an adult and I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
So.
And forgiveness too. I'm still learning that one too. Communication skills.
Oh.
Listening.
Right.
Without interrupting. Very, very difficult.
Right.
When your emotions are high.
Yeah. It is so hard for adults to do.
It is.
Most adults do not have these skills. So it's so great that we have these opportunities to teach them.
Exactly.
Or to learn together.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm telling myself this. When we're talking about this, it's kind of self-talk because I'm thinking about this myself right now. Obviously, it's happening so much in our household these days. And I have to keep telling myself, your kids are learning so much. We're learning so much. We're all learning so much. And this is not just a bad thing.
Right.
That's happening.
Right. There's a lot of good.
You're right. Our family is not super dysfunctional.
Right.
We're learning.
Your family, if your kids fight, your family is not dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. It's actually normal. Oh. I think it's actually what you do with it that is important. Right. So your kids are going to fight.
So
if they're not
Angela,
now, they will. Yeah.
So what do you do when your kids fight?
Well, when I'm at my best. Well, I'll start with when I'm at my worst.
Yes.
When I'm at my worst, I yell at them to stop and then probably give them a consequence.
Yeah.
So don't model that. I am not proud of that, but I'm just going to admit it.
It is the quick and easy thing to do.
It is.
Yeah.
Or separate them.
And honestly, we can't do the best thing for them every single time there's a
No.
fight. It's just
No.
we don't have the time or energy for all of that. So
Especially if it's something that like came up earlier and we talked about it and
Right.
worked it out, and then
Yeah.
it came up again, and now this is the third time, then I've kind of had it.
right. I totally agree. And
So
it's and I also feel like by the third time maybe you need to keep processing it as much, and or maybe you can just be
Right.
like, remember
yeah,
that?
right.
Remember what we
Right.
talked about? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
When I'm at my best, I try and sit everybody down
mhm.
and make sure everybody talks about what they're feeling inside, and try and
mhm.
make sure everybody's heard and is listening to each other. And because I think once you understand somebody and
Right.
where they're coming from, you can feel compassion towards them. I mean, that's just
It
in
is
all
so
of
true.
life.
It is so true.
If we understand somebody's story, we generally feel compassion towards them. And so somebody may be telling us their story, but we're not listening.
Right.
Or somebody may not be telling us the story. So we have to try and get that out and really listen to that.
Right. And sometimes, and I don't know if this is the best way to do it, but instead of the child sharing with everybody what's going on, I will just share with everybody else what's going on with the one
Really?
child. Like, this child is dealing with something really tough. And so
Yeah.
I will go to the other kids and say, listen, we need to be a little little more gentle with this child today.
Yeah.
So, we have to have extra patience because she just went through something, and
Right.
it could be a tough day for her, tough week,
Right.
whatever. So we just have to be aware of that and know that things might not be perfect today with her. And that's okay.
Right.
It's
Right.
okay.
Right.
So I think that helps a lot.
Right. Right. I try and do a lot of, when the child says something, I try and repeat back.
Yes.
And sometimes add a few things that I might think
that's so good.
that they're not saying. So do you really mean this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I really mean this.
I think this is your strength, Angela.
It is.
It is. You are really good at this.
It is. Yeah. I don't know why. I think it's just my personality.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's because I want to be heard and known,
Yeah.
at a deep level myself.
Yes.
So I know what that feels like. So then I want to make sure that other people are heard.
Yeah.
But I realize it doesn't come naturally to everybody.
It doesn't come as naturally to me. I will tell you that. Like, to have everybody sit down and say, okay, tell me how you're feeling. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, I can do that. I just don't feel like I get it out. I don't get out from my kids as much as you do in those situations.
Yeah.
You are really good at pulling those things out. But for me, I feel like what I have to remember too is after we have those kind of conversations, sometimes they're still not going to be 100% like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
kumbaya, we're all best friends again, but at least they're not sitting in the deep hot anger. But there's still this, tension or whatever. And I just have to remember to take the long-term approach with this. We are not going to solve problems 100% every single time. Our kids are on a very long path to learning.
Mm-hmm.
We're on that path too. We're just further along. And so we have to remember our kids are not going to master, learning how to deal with tough situations with their siblings right now today.
Yeah.
I mean, they are going to get one tiny little thing maybe out of a conversation you had this time, and then one tiny little thing next time, or it'll just build on itself. And eventually when they're mature enough and they've had enough life experience and their brain has developed more, they will start to piece things together as they get older. I'm still doing that.
Oh, yeah, me too.
At 41. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a lifelong process.
It is
It's a lifelong
practice.
practice.
Yes.
It's
So
a practice.
So
You need
why
to
am I
practice it.
surprised? This is what I have to keep telling myself. Why am I so surprised when it keeps happening? They're not going to master it.
It seems like to us it comes out of the blue.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden somebody's yelling and then the other person's hitting. And you're like, wait a minute.
We don't hit. Hitting does not solve anything.
Yeah.
Wait a second. But guess what? They've heard that probably hundreds of times in their life. They will probably need to hear that another 1,000 times, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
So
Yeah, the other thing that is important for me to remember is that, sometimes partially solving it is okay and good. Like sometimes I have my kids say, I understand where you're coming from. I'm not ready to forgive you right now.
Oh
Can we
gosh,
talk about
that's
this
so
later?
good. Wow.
Yep. And then because like if they're not ready to apologize or forgive or whatever, I don't want to be like, well, and we're going to wait until you can.
Right.
So they'll say something like, I'm not ready to apologize right now. I just need some time. Or sometimes a fight will happen. This is where it gets tricky. I have some of my kids need time.
Yeah.
Like alone first.
Yes.
Like they
before
need to
you
be
can
separate
talk.
before we can talk about it. And some of my kids need to work it out right now.
Yeah.
And so I think knowing your child and what works best for them is also really helpful. Because sometimes when kids have that break, they can come back refreshed and like totally ready to just talk about this in a minute and be done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm writing this down. That is so good, Angela.
Oh, okay.
That is very good. I'm going to use that probably in a few hours.
I'm not ready yet?
Yeah, I'm not ready.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Or I'm not ready to talk about it too. I think that's a good one.
Yeah. Or even like another one is like, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm not ready to say sorry that I did it yet.
Yeah.
I know that, or like yesterday, one of my kids said, I know it was wrong, but I'm not ready to apologize.
Oh
and I don't know if that's like a pride thing
that is so
or
good.
what it is, but then we just come back to it later.
Such a good step though. It's such a good step. And I think what we expect is to go from 1 to 100 right away.
Yeah.
There's so many steps in between. And that is a good step.
It is.
I think one good thing, we talked about this a little earlier, is just to train our kids to talk to us about what's going on with them too. Their actions might be saying something very different than how they're feeling inside. And so for them to have the self-awareness is one huge step to understand, I'm really upset about something else or whatever. I'm really upset about something. And then to be able to come and tell us or a sibling even, somebody in the family that they trust, I am really having a hard time with this thing, to really understand where their feelings are coming from. Right. It is a big thing. It's huge.
That is big. That reminded me of another thing you could do that a friend of ours mentioned that she does with her son is he's the type who doesn't want to talk about things that are bothering him. And so she, instead of trying to get him to say a lot, she'll just say, is it more like mad, sad, glad, or scared?
Right.
And then he can pick one. Well, it's more like mad.
Oh, yeah.
And then she at least has somewhere to start the conversation. She kind of has an inkling to know like what's going on.
Yeah, I love that because sometimes it's just the idea of sharing your feelings is so overwhelming because there's just so many feelings, there's so many words.
Right.
I love that. That's a great idea.
And I don't have kids who are at a loss for words, so I don't have to use that. But I can imagine if you do, if that might work for you.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So good.
And I still have not read, I'm embarrassed to say, but, we'll just say it. I still have not read Siblings Without Rivalry by the same authors as How to Talk So Kids Will Listen.
Yes. Adele
and I've been
Faber
wanting.
And Elaine
Maslish.
Yes. So they wrote How to Talk So Your Kids Will Listen, which we did a book club on.
Yep. And there was, if that was, actually, there's a lot of great stuff in there too about fighting.
So many great things.
But I've been wanting to read their book, Siblings Without Rivalry, and I haven't. So I need to do that. Maybe we'll give a little update in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Maybe we should do a book club.
Yeah.
Well, I loved talking about this because I do feel like what I need to remember always is that things are going to get solved today, and that's okay.
Yep.
Things might not get perfectly solved today, and that's okay. And just growing a little bit of maybe understanding towards each other is a huge step, and I think great success.
Right.
So we can have a successful day even in the midst of a fighting day.
Totally. It's not a wash. If your kids fight and you had to work it out, that's actually a productive day.
Yeah, very productive.
Yep.
So give yourself a
feel
pat on
good
the back, everybody.
Feel good about that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we move on to loving this week?
Yes, let's do it. Maren, what are you loving this week?
I am loving a book called The Hate You Give.
Yeah.
It is so good, by Angie Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
It's won lots of awards. So, and everybody I know who loves books,
Yep.
told me I should read this book, so I did, and it was just wonderful. So it's about a girl who is 16, and her parents her dad was part of a gang, and just her life and how she dealt with it, getting out of this gang, and just she goes to school in a suburb and just dealing with two very different cultures. It just was very eye-opening, and I just had so much compassion for this girl, and just loved the book so much.
Yeah. Great pick. I gasped because I'm reading it right now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in the middle of it. Yeah. Really good.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, there was a part at the end. There's a point at the end, and when you're in a good book,
yeah,
and it's towards the end, and you're like, I don't want to stop, and yet I don't want this book to end.
I know.
So that's where I was for the last couple days. Finally finished it.
Did you read it with your eyes, or did you listen?
Yes, I did. I read it with my eyes on my Kindle.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. I love it.
Yeah, but I'm assuming the audio would be good for this one.
Yeah. It
just seems like a good book to listen on audio.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a good reader.
Yeah.
Because it's new.
Yes. Yeah. How about you, Angela? What are you loving this week?
I am loving a podcast series from Dear Sugar.
Oh.
It is a 3-part series they did. So I've talked about Dear Sugar before, the podcast.
Yes. Tell us about her again, though.
Okay. So Dear Sugar it's like an advice podcast.
Yeah.
But it's really good advice. It's Cheryl Strayed and Steve Almond. And Cheryl Strayed they're both writers.
Right.
And
Cheryl Strayed wrote Wild.
Yep. And she wrote a book called Tiny Beautiful Things, which is advice. It's like advice letters. And so Dear Sugar started out as like an online advice column.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where she put a lot of those letters into Tiny Beautiful Things, and it's really well written. And so now it's just like a podcast where they get letters from people and they answer them so well. It was just so well done. But so I'm a fan of Dear Sugar, but they did an episode. They did a 3-part episode on consent, which was so good because that's a cultural thing that we're dealing with right now in our culture. For sure. So I think it was so good to talk about. And they talked about, people wrote them letters about certain situations. Yeah. And, a lot of them were like in the gray. So like not clear. And so they had some experts on, and they talked about like what consent means and like how to give consent and how to ask for consent. And I just thought it was so good. Oh, so good.
I am ready to listen.
Yeah.
So great. I don't always listen to that podcast.
I know. Yeah.
But I really do like Cheryl Strayed. So yeah. And I would love to hear more I would love to hear her take on that topic for sure. I bet she's got some good stuff to say.
Yep. Yep. And they had an expert who is like, an expert in that kind of thing on talking about like what to do in certain situations and how our culture has not given people, we don't talk about this. Right. Like what to do in a situation to give somebody consent or to ask for consent or to, like how to read people. And so it was just very good.
That's so good. I can't wait.
I think everybody should listen.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think that's all.
Yes.
Yeah, this was fun. If you would like to follow us on social media, you can. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Homeschool Unrefined. We have a website, homeschoolunrefined.com, and you can find links to everything that we talked about there in our show notes. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Homeschool Unrefined was created by Maren Gorse and Angela Sizer. Thanks to Gambler's Daughter for providing the music for our show. You can find Gambler's Daughter at facebook.com/gamblersdaughtermusic.